Hi, boys and girls. We're ready to finish this story. So we're going on to, I'm pretty sure this is chapter 9, The Spell, and we have one more after that. These characters are very fun and I'm enjoying them. So let's see what's going to happen with Bean's older sister. Do you think that Ivy will be able to cast the spell on her? I don't know. It's kind of crazy. What would happen if you got a spell casted on you and all you could do is dance all the time? I bet you would get really tired. Well, let's see what these characters are doing. All right. The spell. Nancy stopped dragging Bean across the porch and looked at Ivy. Who are you? She asked. I'm Ivy. Ivy smiled and slitted her eyes. With her white face and red blood drops, she looked very witchy. It matters not. Free, my friend, she hissed. Wow, thought Bean. She's really going for it. Nancy dropped Bean's arm and lifted one eyebrow, which was something she had just learned how to do and did it all the time. What's that supposed to be? She asked in a snippy, grown up way, looking at Ivy's wand. Ivy shook the wand in Nancy's face. This is your doom, she said in a deep voice. It's a wand, said Bean, looking back and forth between Ivy and Nancy. She was beginning to worry. Maybe Ivy was going for it too much. With her older sisters, you had to be able to say that you never meant what you said, that you were kidding the whole time. Ivy didn't seem to know that. Nancy snorted. It's a stick, she said. Look at Ivy's robe, and giggled. Nice bathrobe, too. You guys are complete and total dweebs. Uh-oh. Bean looked at Ivy. Her cheeks were red under the white paint, and her eyes glittered. She looked like she might cry. Suddenly, Bean was furious. Before she had been really mad, but now Nancy was making fun of Ivy, and that made Bean furious. Without even stopping to think about it, Bean reached down into the bucket she was still carrying. She got a handful of pink worms. For a second, they squished in her hand, and then she threw them at Nancy's face. Some of them fell on Nancy's shirt, and some of them got stuck in her hair, but one landed on her eyebrow and wiggled there, trying to find some dirt. Nancy was so surprised she froze. She just stood there with her mouth hanging open, staring at Bean. Calmly, Bean reached into the bucket again and got another handful of worms. She aimed better this time. She got one in Nancy's mouth. Oh my goodness, boys and girls. If someone threw worms at me, woohoo! How would you feel if someone threw worms at you? I don't know. The pink worm went flying as Nancy spit it out. There was a tiny moment of quiet. Then she opened her mouth wide and let out a giant scream. Bean and Ivy looked at each other and smiled. Whatever happens next, their eyes said, that was worth it. And then they began to run. Nancy tore after them, still screaming. Bean zigzagged across the lawn because she knew it was harder to catch someone who was zigzagging. Ivy zigzagged too, right behind Bean. Worms! Worms! Nancy was screaming. She had lost her mind. Ah! Bean could hear her mother calling, what on earth? Girls! Girls! Bean and Ivy ran around the trampoline with Nancy close behind. They jumped over the hula hoops and the stilts and headed for the trees. Nancy followed, still screaming. She was right behind them. She was so close she could almost grab the soft folds of Ivy's robe. She was just about to get it. Help! Squealed Ivy. Bean gave a yank and pulled the robe away in the nick of time. Ivy and Bean swerved for the playhouse. Maybe they could get inside it before Nancy tackled them. Come on, Bean yelled. Together, they jumped over the worm pit, squeezed into the playhouse, and slammed the door. Whew! They said together. Then it happened. Nancy was still chasing them. She was running toward the playhouse and toward the worm pit. The big, muddy worm pit. Bean and Ivy knew it was there, but Nancy didn't, and she didn't see it. She charged toward the playhouse, and whoops, her foot landed on the side of the muddy pit. Ivy and Bean looked out the playhouse window and they saw Nancy skidding on the slimy edge of the hole. Back and forth she wobbled, trying to keep her balance. She kicked out one foot, she waved her arms wildly, she kicked out the other foot, she waved, she kicked. Do you think she fell in the mud pit? Oh boy. Ah! This was perfect. She was dancing, yelled Bean. The spell worked, yelled Ivy. And just at that moment, with a sloppy, gloppy thud, Nancy slipped off the edge and landed in the muddy goo at the bottom of the worm pit. Uh-oh. We might be in trouble for getting your sister all muddy. What do you think, boys and girls? Oh, these two are little characters. They're silly. All right, last chapter. Let's go for it and finish this off. No dessert. No dessert, said Bean. No videos for a week. But at least they didn't make me stay in my room. Ivy was sitting next to Bean on her front porch. It was almost dark. They watched the bugs flying around the streetlight. I don't think they're really mad, said Ivy. You don't? They had seemed pretty mad to Bean. They have to act mad so they'll seem fair to your sister, Ivy said. But your mom had this little teeny smile on her face when she pulled Nancy out of the pit. She thought it was funny. Bean smiled too, remembering. It was funny. It was great. Nancy says she's never going to speak to either of us ever again. And she took back the coloring book she gave me. Well, she never spoke to me before today, so that won't be any different for me. It'll be better for me, but I bet she doesn't stick to it, Bean yawned. It had been a big day. She turned to Ivy. Do you think the spell is what made her dance? Of course, Ivy sounded very sure. But after a minute, she said, I didn't have time to say the spell, really. I just sort of thought it at the last second. Bean stared into the shadowy yard. Maybe that's why she didn't dance for very long, because you only thought the spell instead of saying it. Next time I'll say it. You're going to do it again? On who? Bean asked. I was thinking about that Mrs. Trance, said Ivy. Bean pictured Mrs. Trance kicking up her feet on the edge of a muddy pit. It would be a beautiful sight. Can you teach me to burp like that? Said Bean. Sure, Ivy said. Maybe I'll try something new on Mrs. Trance, like a storm of grasshoppers. Is that a hard one? No, but we'll have to start with a lot of grasshoppers, said Ivy. It seems like all the spells have bugs in them, said Bean. Not all of them, said Ivy. Potions don't. Potions? That sounded fun. Let's make a potion, Bean said. Okay, Ivy said. Tomorrow we'll make potions. I know what, said Bean. Tomorrow, let's fix up the lab in your room. Then we can make potions. She pictured a lab with shelves full of little bottles, and she and Ivy would wear goggles. Ivy sat up straighter. Yeah, that'll be good. We'll dump the dressing room and get some shelves with little bottles, and maybe a counter. Bean! Bean's mother came out on the front porch. There you are. It's almost bath time. Ivy, do you want me to walk you home? Okay, said Ivy, but Bean's mom sat down beside Bean and looked at the nighttime sky. You girls have certainly had a big day, haven't you? Bean leaned against her mother's arm. Tomorrow we're going to make a lab in Ivy's room. You are you? Said Bean's mom. What for? Potions, said Ivy. What kind of potions? Asked Bean's mom. Secret potions, said Ivy. There was a silence. Then Bean's mom said, No matches, no poison, no explosions, no deadly fumes, no bugging Nancy. Is that clear? Ivy and Bean looked at each other and rolled their eyes. Weren't you the one who was always telling me to play with her? Said Bean. Wasn't this all your idea in the first place? Bean's mother smiled at them in the dark. The light on Ivy's porch came on, and Ivy's mom stepped out the door. She waved across the street. Time to come in, honey. Down the stairs and across the circle she came in the moonlight. Ivy stood up. So did Bean. See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow. And the day after that, Bean added in her mind. Ivy, holding her her mother's hand in the middle of the street, turned around to look at Bean. And a day after that, she said. The end. Aw, Ivy and Bean, they're cute characters. I really enjoyed reading this to you, boys and girls. So I'll get started in working on the second book, Ivy and Bean and the Ghost That Had to Go. Ooh. Let me know if you enjoyed it. Go ahead and read all of it. Reread it twice if you need to. And it's on Reading Counts. It's just Ivy and Bean. That's the very first one. And I think the first couple books are actually on there. But I hope you enjoyed it. See you later.